Alright guys, I wanted to talk about Fahrenheit 451 by Bradbury today. I recently wrote a review on Goodreads and also on my blog about this book. It's something that I've been looking forward to reading for a long time. I was at work in 2007, I think, when a colleague of mine recommended it highly because I'd spoken about Animal Farm, 1984 and so on, these sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian novels that I do enjoy such a lot and that are, well read around the world. I really don't understand why it's taken me so long to read this. It's taken like 8 years for me to get around to doing it. And when you get an idea about a book, what it's going to be like, how you think the characters are going to be, and what the sort of outline of the plot's going to be, just purely from hearsay, purely from the way people have gone on about it. With this book, I sort of built it up in my mind to something that it wasn't. And then when I did come to read it, it didn't pan out, obviously didn't pan out in that way at all. So I eventually picked it up, started reading it, and I thought, this isn't as I thought it would be at all. And I actually found it really hard to get into at first. I found Bradbury's writing style really hard to engage with. And I didn't find the main character, Guy Montag, very interesting at all. There's nothing really that I found to like about him. He just seems a bit average. And I mean, I guess that's maybe the point, but the outline of the plot is that it's a dystopian future where books are burned by firemen who are sort of like a Gestapo secret police that go around with flamethrowers and kerosene and what have you to actually burn books and get rid of them because they're thought to be the source of all misery and discord. And Guy is a fireman. And he basically realises one day when he meets this girl called Clarice McClellan, who basically educates him about the sort of greenery in the world and sort of the nicer things that are there that he'd ignored or chosen to ignore anyway, purely because he's been lobotomized by the society around him, society of reality television. And bearing in mind this was written in the early 50s, it's got a lot of sort of foresight on Bradbury's part. And he's spoken about the writing process, and I think that it took him, a very short amount of time to write, and he wrote it in a library at a university on the typewriters there that you could pay to rent, which I think you can sort of tell that he has done that, and he's sort of not rushed it, but it's very, you can sort of tell that it's all been sort of done in one go. There's no real before and after. Like in Stranger in a Strange Land, I felt, by Robert Heinlein, there's definitely, because it took him quite a long time to write, you can tell that there's a before and after. There's a period where it was stopped, and then he picked it up again, perhaps. That's my perception of it. Maybe not, but this book, Guy eventually has these suspicions about, why books are so dangerous and why they're burned and things. And the mystery is, does he actually then go and collect books himself, or are there books in his house, without sort of spoiling anything? His relationship, even though books are sort of evil and cause all the misery, he dude going for a walk. They cause all the misery. He's actually unhappy in his life. His wife is it's a completely dysfunctional marriage, and she is brainwashed completely by the reality sort of television and the culture that's imposed onto them. And he's just, I guess, starts to feel a bit disillusioned. But he does suddenly, the change is very sudden. He doesn't actually, considering that he would have been indoctrinated since he was very young. I felt that the change towards him realizing that things aren't as they should be, or something's very wrong with the world that he lives in. The change was sort of like that. It was just, I thought that was a bit not very plausible, but considering someone's being brainwashed, you know, people regard it in the same pantheon as 1984 and novels of that ilk, but not for me. I mean, 1984 was a 5-star book for me. It was one of the best, and I think this is good for sure. It's a good book. I did enjoy it after it picked up and things started happening, but it's not up there with 1984 for me. 1984 is a scary book because there's so much of it that we now see that pervades the culture, and we see it all around us. And in this book, I think it just needed fleshing out a bit more. You know, there are some really good ideas there, and especially now with people just not reading really, and not, you know, in general, people are reading less and less, and they're, you know, sucked into the reality television and so on. There are things that you can draw from it, certainly, and there's some good quotes. I did find that the quotes from a character called Granger and Beatty were the best ones, perhaps. Guy doesn't really have that much memorable dialogue, but I shared them in my quote series. The sunlight's annoying me, but yeah, in overall, it's a 4-star book for me. I do think that anyone with an interest in the genre should pick it up and give it a read. Let me know what you think. But yeah, it's a good book, but in my opinion, not a great book. And I always envisioned that it would be a great book. But you know, that's what happens sometimes when we build things up into things that they're not, because we want them to be things that they're not. But yeah, certainly I'll be getting hold of more Bradbury material. I quite like the look of Something Wicked This Way Comes and The Illustrated Man, things like that. So yeah, do pick it up and let me know what you think. 4 stars from me. Thanks for watching.